Monday is typically the time that I sleep in the longest in the week. And so last Monday, I was up at, actually, this wasn't common, but I was up at 4:30 reading Jeremiah 33, and then just thinking, I've got to put this before the church this week. And so this has been on my heart all week. I've been meditating on this passage, and I just want to put it before us, and especially God's words through Jeremiah in verse 11. So if you'll look at verse 11, this is God's words through Jeremiah. He says, "Give thanks to the Lord of hosts, for the Lord is good, and his steadfast love endures forever." So I don't know if you showed up with a heart ready to rejoice in that, full of thankfulness, or if you showed up with a heart wanting to give thanks but not feeling that you were there yet. And if you're the latter, if you're feeling your heart is not thankful, at least how you would want it to be, I'm praying that God would use this little passage to revive it. I think we need to start by acknowledging that in 2020, this is a year that it would be very natural for us not to be grateful. That would be the natural thing. Most people aren't thankful for this year. There's many sicknesses. We even have many out today, sick. COVID, other sicknesses. People in our families that we love have passed away. Emotionally, the numbers of depression, suicide, anxiety are all going up. We know that many marriage and parenting problems have increased because of quarantine and being in the house together, and those stats are coming out. I have a pastor friend who this week I found out that he stepped down from his church, a pastor up north, because it was so divided over social justice issues. Some of the people said, "You're not preaching about social justice enough." Other people said, "You're preaching about it too much." And then they were divided over COVID. "Why don't you tell everybody to wear a mask, Pastor?" And then the other people saying, "Don't let anybody wear a mask." And the church was just so divided, he finally had to step down because it was just so much division in the church. And it's a hard year for many churches. I know for myself, this year has been, I think the difficult trial of my life was in the summer, spending almost 50 days laying in bed with a severe back injury. And so it would be easier for many of us to find all of the bad things to talk about this year than the good things. And that would be to completely forget what Jeremiah 33 says. That would be to forget. And so this Thanksgiving service, as Kent said at the beginning, isn't so much about the holiday. It's just kind of happenstance, providential, that it falls on the week of Thanksgiving. We wanted to have a Thanksgiving service to give thanks to God because he is unrelenting in his goodness toward us as his people. And it is very appropriate for us to give thanks. So let me get us into this passage and give us some context. Jeremiah 33. Jeremiah is ministering to a people who are taken off into captivity in Babylon and exiled into another country. So this is not like America where ideologies are creeping in and slowly changing the culture. This is not like America where new laws are slowly being passed and it's gradually changing our way of life. This is captors coming in and taking God's people out of Jerusalem into a foreign land. And this would be like, for example, Saudi Arabia or some Arab nation coming and taking thousands of Americans out of America into their country. Which for Israel, there's not even really a parallel, because let's say you took a few thousand Christians out of America. Well, they can still worship the Lord in whatever country they go to, right? They can preach the gospel. They can plant a church. You get a few believers gathered. You've got the word of God. You got the Spirit of God, the gospel, and you've got a church, right? But for Israel, you take them out of Jerusalem, where the temple is, where there's sacrificial worship, and now they can't have church. they can't do public worship anymore. And so life for them spiritually is over as they know it. And their kids are going to grow up not gathering like this with the people of God, the saints of old, hearing about all of the goodness of the Lord. They're going to grow up in Babylon learning all the pagan deities. This is the context for Jeremiah. This is who he's speaking to. And he's not a man who's just in his ivory tower of comfort and then just telling all the people, hey, cheer up, it's not as bad as you think it is. And he's avoiding suffering himself. This man has been persecuted numerous times physically for his preaching. This man has been thrown in prison, and he's writing chapter 33 out of prison. It says in verse 1 of chapter 33 that he's unjustly imprisoned, and that's where he's writing this passage on Thanksgiving, about Thanksgiving. And that context matters. And so Jeremiah is known to be the prophet of suffering, yet here he is calling God's people to give thanks. So here's my question this morning. How does he give thanks in prison, unjustly treated? And how does he call God's people who are suffering to give thanks and expect them to actually do it? How? And here's the answer that I want to give. And if I had 2 hours, I could unpack this a lot more, but I got about 10 minutes that I want to do this. Here's the answer. Promises. Lots and lots of promises. There's not one or two promises in this section. There's hundreds of promises in Jeremiah 31 to 33. So this is a little section, and there's hundreds of promises here. And so if you want to really bless yourself and have a blessed week, later this week, tomorrow, tonight, later this week, spend time in Jeremiah 31 to 33, meditating on those promises, thanking God for those promises, and trying to believe that they are true. Jeremiah is no fool when he commands us and says, give thanks. He knows that when he commands God's people, give thanks to the Lord, he's going to overwhelm them with so many promises that they will actually be able to do that if they believe those promises. The promises give birth to the thanksgiving. That's how it works. You say, how do I get my heart to want to give thanks to the Lord? You need the promises of God. The promises of God are supernaturally charged to revive our hearts so that we can give thanksgiving to the Lord. Yesterday, my youngest had a birthday party, and you know how we do it as parents when they get gifts from friends or family. We tell them, say thank you to the person who gave you the gift. And our youngest was very excited about his gifts to the point where he just cared about the gifts, and saying thank you was not on his mind. But we told him anyway, let's say thank you for the gifts. Someone gave these to you, buddy. And we're hoping that there's something more real that would happen in his heart. Is that what's going on here when Jeremiah tells them to give thanks? That he's just telling them, just say it, even if you don't feel it. Just say thanks to God, even if it's not in your heart. Is that what he's doing? And I don't think it is, and I think that's dangerous. And I'll quote John Piper on this. He said, there is such thing as hypocritical thanksgiving. Jesus warned that there are people who honor him with their lips, but their hearts are far from him. And in vain, it says, they worship. And so it is possible to give lip service and thanks to God and your heart not be in it, and it not be true thanksgiving. So here's what I do when I think about that. I go, okay, so I don't really know if my heart is truly thankful right now, so maybe I won't say thank you to the Lord. Maybe I won't sing this song because I don't know if it's genuine. And Piper warns against that. He said, here's what you do. You say thank you to God because he gave it to you. He's been good to you. And then you pray for your heart that God would make it real. And then if you get into the habit of saying thank you to the Lord over and over and over again, it actually has a transformative effect. That if we discipline ourselves and create a habit of gratitude, our hearts will catch up eventually. And I think that's wise. And so it's wise to look at a command that says give thanks to the Lord and then do it. And then trust that God will get our heart to that point. So look back at verse 11. Give thanks to the Lord of hosts, for the Lord is good and his love endures forever. That's the command. Give thanks to the Lord. Now, what's the reason? For. So give thanks to the Lord. He doesn't just leave us with the command. He says, for or because the Lord is good and his steadfast love, or his love, his covenantal, it's hesed, the word. It's a covenantal love, endures forever. And so God doesn't just say, be a robot, give thanks to me, even though your heart's not there. He gives us reasons why we should be thankful, for he is good and his love endures forever. And for Israel, when they would hear the steadfast love of the Lord, certainly they were to think back to the Exodus, how God delivered them from slavery. But I think even more so, they were to think forward about the promised Messiah. That the promise of a coming Messiah would provoke that thanksgiving. So look at verse 14. This is in our context. It says, the days are coming. The days are coming. All right, and days are coming for what? Verse 15. For a righteous branch from David to shoot forth. That's Jesus. And then it calls him what? The Lord is our righteousness. Guys, that cross, what is that? What do you think of when you see that? Do you think that is my righteousness? The Lord and what he accomplished on that cross 2,000 years ago is my righteousness. Not my Bible reading, not my church attendance, not the prayer I prayed to ask Jesus in my heart. What he accomplished on the cross 2,000 years ago is my righteousness. The Lord is my righteousness. The righteous branch that sprung up is my righteousness. And then Jeremiah is saying, hey guys, there's a promise coming that a righteousness, that the Lord will become the righteousness of his people. And you say, well, how do we know that it's talking about Jesus? And how do we know it's talking about the righteousness he would accomplish on the cross? And I would take us back 2 chapters to Jeremiah 31:31, when it says the same phrase, the days are coming, and then it says, behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a, here's the phrase, new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord. For this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. And now listen to the promises. I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. Here it is. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sins no more. And we know in Hebrews, the author of Hebrews quotes that passage, and he says that is the church. That has happened to God's people who have received Christ. Their sins have been cleansed and forgiven. So look back at Jeremiah 33, verse 6. And 7 times, which is the number of completion, we have, I will, I will, I will, I will cleanse, verse 8. I will cleanse, or which is a removing of guilt and defilement morally. And then I will forgive. That brings the offender back into fellowship with God. And then look at the word all. All. I will cleanse what? All their sin. I will forgive all their iniquity. If you came for no other reason than to remember that, all your sins that you brought into this park, that you've accomplished in the totality of your life, all of them cleansed, all of them forgiven. What good news. And it actually, honestly, it gets better than this. This cleansing goes deep. Hebrews 9:10 says, even our consciences are cleansed from dead works. And it says our hearts are sprinkled clean from an evil conscience. So how good is forgiveness if you walk around still feeling guilty for all the sins you've committed? But the gospel is so good that it says it even cleanses the conscience. So you don't have to walk around full of shame and guilt for all of your sin. He actually cleanses it even to the point of our conscience. So that's why someone who sinned last night or even this morning on the way to church could have so much trust in the righteousness that came from the cross of Christ that we could sit here and still give thanks to God. Genuine thanks to God. Because we know that sin doesn't break us out of relationship with Him. This is glorious news. So how is the cleansing and forgiveness possible? A righteous branch from the Davidic line, Jesus Christ, will come, and He is our righteousness. What do we do as a response? Verse 11. Look at this. We're going to end right here. The voice of the bridegroom, the voice of the bride, the voices of those who sing as they bring drink offerings to the house of the Lord, or thank offerings to the house of the Lord. And then here's the command: give thanks to the Lord, for He is good, and His steadfast love endures forever. Church, that prophecy is being fulfilled right now in this park. Do you realize that? Or I'm a heretic and preach to fault. This prophecy has been fulfilled and is being fulfilled in this park if you've received Christ as your righteousness. If Christ really did come and accomplish salvation on the cross. And if you're able to give genuine thanks to Him for what He's done for you, that prophecy is fulfilled in you. And so, we're going to, actually, those who are going to share testimonies, if you want to go ahead and start making your way up here, you could kind of go around and come up the stairs here. Y'all can go ahead and start coming up. And I want to say this as they're kind of making their way up here. As they give testimony to the goodness of God in their lives, they are fulfilling this prophecy. And that doesn't make everyone else spectators. As you hear of the goodness of God in their lives, would you thank God for His goodness in your life? And you too will see this prophecy being fulfilled in you.